Well, shalom everybody, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. I thought I would do something a little bit different in this book review because I don't want to focus on any particular work, although we will be looking at one book more than the others. But I wanted to focus on an illustrator, a painter who has been very proficient in the Haredi Orthodox Jewish world, and his name is Gadi Pollack. Gadi Pollack. And if you are familiar with this illustrator, he's just an amazing artist, and he has released a steadily growing body of work, which is absolutely outstanding. And I don't think there is another artist at all in the world that depicts biblical subject matter with the accuracy that this man does. Now, the first book, which is the main book that I'm going to review in this video, is called The Desert Diary. The Desert Diary, and it was released in 2015 originally, and it's quite a large sort of format book. Here it is here, and it's one of his illustrations on the cover there. I think he's also the author of this particular book, and it's put out by Marava Publications. And I'll put a link to these books, to this one and a few of the others in the description down below. And why I recommend these books is because while they're sort of aimed at children, a majority of his books are aimed at children, they are filled with so much detail, attention to detail, and really drawing on not just the biblical narrative, but take into account the actual history of these events that we are also familiar with. Now, as you can work out by looking at this book, that it is a diary written from the perspective of a young Jewish boy who was in the wilderness during the 40 years during the sojourn of Israel's journeys, in the desert. And all over the place, really, not just the desert. They were in sort of some places that were a little bit more sort of amicable than others at times. It just depends on what leg of the journey that was. And why I find this man's artwork so fascinating is because apart from its realism, he really does his homework in terms of his research on any given subject. And the wilderness journeys, this book that predominantly deals with the wilderness journeys, is no exception. Now, many of you are familiar with the actual encampment. There's the encampment that you're all familiar with. But if you look very carefully, you will see the first thing you'll notice is the clouds of glory that actually surround the encampment. And these clouds of glory were actually in place by the merit of Aaron. And they served as a buffer from the outside world, and they would miraculously cover the actual entirety of the encampment like sort of like a compact mobile air conditioning unit that would enable the dwellers in this encampment to experience very, very good weather and protect them from the outside elements, including wind, rain, storms, and cyclones and all that. But not only that, it would protect them on the ground and actually keep them safe from scorpions, snakes, and other sort of ground-dwelling predators. And in addition to that, it would miraculously air clean their clothing throughout the entire sojourn. And as many of you are familiar with, the clothes never really needed to be washed, at least in a sort of a practical sense that we're familiar with cleaning clothes, although they could have been cleaned, and I'm sure in many cases they were. But if they weren't, they would still miraculously maintain their cleanliness. And not only that, the clothes grew with them, and that includes footwear and anything and everything else to do with clothing. And if you look carefully, you will see, I'll hold it up as close as I can there, there is a sort of an X-shaped sort of line that fans out from the Mishkan in the center, and that is clean water that would fan out from the Mishkan in an X pattern, and that would run as a perimeter around each of the tribes' encampments and the actual overall perimeter of the camp itself. And we have another illustration here that nicely depicts that from ground level, looking back at the Mishkan. And you'll notice the Mishkan is on elevated ground. And at the front of the Mishkan, there is water fountaining out and water falling down this sort of jutting sort of locality that sort of reared up from the earth to accommodate the Mishkan's construction. And many of us aren't aware that that's actually the most accurate depiction that you can come up with. And you'll see also, if you look carefully at the actual tents of the particular tribe that we're focusing here from this vantage point, and how their actual tents were arrayed, giving each dweller in the tent their relevant privacy, and the tents varied depending on the size of the families. And so it was really a mobile city that existed miraculously, and it's beautifully written. It's beautifully written from the perspective of this young boy. And he has an older brother, and here is another depiction here of the manna that actually fell early in the morning. And here they are gathering it up. And this part of the diary relates how the older brother observes an individual that has to travel quite a ways to actually acquire his portion of manna. And they're discussing within themselves, with each other, how this man is probably not the most righteous, and that very much follows in accordance with rabbinic thought. And as a consequence of their discussion, noting that this particular individual has to go a long way to acquire his manna, the older brother develops zarat, which is the skin malady, and comes about by way of lashon hara, of evil speech. And he is subsequently examined by the Kohanim, and he is ushered outside the protective barrier of the clouds of glory for a time. And there he is, sort of leaving, and they shave his head, and his younger brother's kind of left behind to sort of wait for him. And now you might be thinking, why did the younger brother go out as well? Well, the idea is that transgressions that a person commits up to the age of 13, they are more looked in the light of as being something that is the fault of the parents. So that's why it's important when there's a bat or bar mitzvah, that this is a very important time for an individual, because he's now sort of coming into his own. And so while the person isn't completely free of punishments from transgressions up to that age, the burden largely lies with the parents and possibly older siblings. And so sort of no page is sort of left unturned, forgive the pun. And there's the brother there finally being led out of exile to come back in the camp, and his head's still freshly shorn there. And it's just absolutely phenomenal. The locality of the time of the recording of the journey is Kodesh Bonea, which is in the vicinity of Paran, or Paran, I think it's Paran. And just the way it's written is just so amazing. And so there's a very interesting sequence here that's beautifully depicted of all the men that were from the era of the Exodus. And what you're witnessing here in this illustration is all the men, 25,000 I believe, on a particular night, the night that they complained after the spies came back from the promised land, and they complained. They complained like around the clock, and this angered Hashem, and he vowed that nobody from the generation of the Exodus, save Yeshua, Ben Nun, and Joshua, were allowed to actually cross over into the actual promised land. And so what occurred on this particular night every year over the course of those 40 years was a time where Moshe ordered the men to go out and dig their own graves. And the idea was that after they dug their graves with their loved ones with them, they would spend the night in the graves, and most of them would die during the night, and their family would bury them. Some wouldn't die. Some would wake up in their graves that morning and have another year. So let's just read a little bit of this incident. The 9th night of the 5th month of the 13th year since the exodus from Egypt, sadness fills our camp. Every year on this night, we are bitterly reminded of the episode when our nation cried for no reason. It was 11 years ago, and I was merely a baby. Moshe Rabbeinu, our righteous, humble leader, sent messengers to scout out the land. Hashem promised us. After traveling for 40 years, they arrived back on this very night and slandered our holy land. That night, the men of our people cried and complained, saying, "Why is Hashem bringing us to this land? If only we had remained in Mitzrayim." Which are, fairly loaded words and accusations against the Holy One, blessed be He. So Hashem decreed that the generations that cried for naught, the men between 20 and 60 years old, would never enter the land and would die in the desert. And so every year on the eve of the 9th night, Moshe pronounced an annual somber refrain, "Men go out to dig." Today, that is exactly what we did. Our father held a shovel in his hand, and we joined him as he went out to the field with the others. And a great surge of crying rose from the camp as the men dug the graves that they are to sleep in tonight. It was understood that many would not wake in the morning. 15,000, there you go, 15,000 men, 15,000, not 25,000, 15,000 of our men will die tonight, to be interred by their loved ones, but not one of the women. Death was not decreed upon the women because they showed great love for our land, while the men asked to return to Mitzrayim. Actually, in actual fact, it probably would have been actually closer to 25,000 because not all of them would die. Here's another shot here looking up at the Mishkan on the ground elevation there from ground level. Beautiful illustrations and just so beautifully written, and it's a book that you'll sort of go back to again and again, and you'll learn something. You'll learn not just one thing, but you'll probably learn many things on every page of text, and any page devoid of text, you'll also learn something from looking at the images. Now, I think this is very important because we are often stimulated audibly by listening to lectures and going along live to see a lecture, or we'll read from a book, or we will study, and a lot of this is a verbal interplay. And so your ears are the conduit by which you learn, and your eyes when you read. And what happens when we look at imagery is we become stimulated optically, and that also adds to our learning, using yet one more gate that we have of our senses to input Torah principles and learn. What else have we got here in this absolutely amazing book? There's pages here that sort of open out into sort of like a 4-page spread, and that's an image of the children of Israel actually on their sojourn, actually on the move there. It's just so lavishly illustrated, and there's so much attention to detail that you'll be poring over the images and you'll be finding little things that you remember reading in the detail of the commentary. Now, what is interesting is that there is quite a lot over the last sort of lot of centuries, when people have emerged to sort of praise the Bible and champion the Bible, they have a tendency to stick just to the text that's written in the very words themselves of the Torah and the Tanakh and so on. And you will often find that the original Hebrew contains many hidden meanings that give a lot more depth and clarity to each given situation that is being written about. And this is where the commentators come in, men of the Great Assembly, wise men, sages and rabbis over the years have uncovered lots of gems, and these make up a lot of the most widely accepted commentaries. Rashi is probably, the biggest gun, and this artist incorporates it all. And so, Messianic groups who often will reject rabbinic Judaism should bear in mind that a lot of their actual observance is actually gleaned by the rabbis. So it's very important that we be very careful when we criticize Jewish wisdom and Jewish writings. There we have a picture which depicts the people who were mocking and complaining, and Moshe strikes the rock and water bursts forth from the rock, which actually kills quite a multitude of people in that episode. And there it's beautifully illustrated there. What else have we got? We've got sources in the back of the book, but unfortunately they're in Hebrew. The majority of the main part of the text is in English. Now you can get the whole thing in Hebrew as well, and I think it's been translated into other languages. But nonetheless, it has quite a large portion of the book is full of sources, and each page, an image on each page is numbered. Let's see if I can find something else for you here. I think there's a picture of Og, the giant Og. I think there's a picture. Oh, this is a great one. This is Pinhas, as he's entering the tent before he goes to, essentially commit an act of homicide, which is rewarded by Hashem when there is a sexual indiscretion that's, has attention drawn to it among those that are assembled by two individuals, Shimon and Cosby. And let me just see if I can find this page of Og that has been slain, because he's the giant, the one giant that actually survived. Oh, there's a picture of Og going into battle. You can sort of see him there. But just behind that page, it opens out into Og with the mountain that he held aloft over his head collapsed on him, and I don't think I've got enough room to sort of show you the whole thing, but it's just absolutely phenomenal. You can see his hand there, and worth every cent you pay for it. It's just that good. And so this is sort of one of the ones I really recommend you get, because it's really going to give you a feel for what it was like to be in the wilderness in a sort of a real sort of setting. What I have here also is another book called From Darkness to Light. This is called From Darkness to Light. And this is really interesting, and it sort of runs along in the same vein as the Where's Wally books, but there's no sort of trying to find Wally. What it does is it shows a sort of fictitious shot of Egypt with Goshen sort of across a sort of a river in the background, and each double page is the same shot. And what the author has done, what the artist has done, I don't know, the Desert Diary is actually authored and illustrated by Gadi Pollack, whereas I think this might be authored by Gadi Pollack as well. It's very sort of light on text, this one. It's more about the image. And here we have a double page spread of the land of Goshen, and that's when sort of all is well. There's not much going on there. And it's got all the Hebrews doing their thing, and you can't really sort of see anything on the sort of at this stage. There's no sort of detail of Egypt proper, but you can see the pyramids in the background. But once you turn the page, you have now Egypt is visible, and that is a sort of a section of the front of Paro's palace with Goshen in the background. So bear that in mind. That's going to be the shot that you're going to see throughout the book. And so here's sort of one evening of a night, a snapshot of how the actual Egyptians treated the Hebrews. And you can go and look into all the detail in each one of those pages, and you can actually see, all the sort of things that they were doing. There's a shot here of the Egyptians causing the Hebrews to sort of look after wild animals. A lot of times they'll get them to go out to hunt wild animals, exotic animals that were dangerous, and they would under-equip them with all the things that they need to actually hunt the animals, and a lot of Hebrews would die. And then once they acquired the exotic animals, they would make sport with the animals, with the Hebrews, and watch them sort of attack them and kill them. So it's pretty brutal. And so here we have the plague of blood, and this is sort of a depiction of the actual plague of blood and how it affected the economy, because all the fish died. And so all the actual the fishermen and all their businesses, and they were no longer able to function. There was a terrible smell across the land, and all the water had turned to blood, not just the water in the Nile. And so the Egyptians weren't able to actually drink water for the duration of that plague. I believe it was 3 days. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe it was 3 days. A human being can't really last for more than 3 days without water. But for the Hebrews, if they wanted to drink water, they could even drink in the Nile, and the water would miraculously become pure water to drink. And if you look carefully there, you can see that there's a little Hebrew child actually in the Nile, and the water right around him immediately has become pure. And then a little bit past that, you can see another Hebrew child, because he's gathering water out of the Nile, which is blood. But when they're sort of fiddling with the water becomes actually pure water again, and they're selling it back to the Egyptians, the Mitzrayim. And they would sell it back to them at exorbitantly high prices. So during that plague, the Hebrews became quite wealthy, because before long, the Egyptians realized that they couldn't actually draw water themselves to drink. The next one is the plagues, which I found was absolutely fascinating, made more so by the fact that they've gone to the trouble. The author is the illustrator and author has gone to the trouble to show the first frog that emerged from the Nile, which was a giant frog. And every time the Egyptians began to dash the frog and hit it and try and kill it, out of its mouth would burst forth thousands upon thousands of more frogs, until and every time they tried to attack some frogs that came out, which was slightly still large, but not quite as large as the giant one, they would actually have other frogs come out of them. And so that was one of the ways the frogs multiplied across the land. And they would actually, in most cases, the frogs would actually materialize in anywhere there was moisture or water. And so in some cases, or in a lot of cases, the Egyptians would have frogs actually manifest inside their bodies, and they could feel the frogs squirming around in their bodies. And the frogs were sort of, they were kind of like lemmings. They didn't care where they went. They would even jump into, furnaces and ovens and so on and so forth. Now, this one is the plague of lice, and it's just so beautifully illustrated. And if you have kids and you want to make these stories come to life for them, look no further than Gadi Pollack. This guy is an absolute master. Now, this is terrific. This is the wild beast. This is probably one of the most frightening plagues, as all the animals sort of worked in unison to destroy the Egyptians. And if you read the actual Jewish writings, some of the Midrashim and things like that, they actually started making their way toward Mitzrayim a long time ago. So even before the plagues had started, animals from different parts of the world had started to traverse and make their way towards Mitzrayim. And animals such as polar bears and ones that were in climates that were completely different to the one they were going to like destroy the Egyptians in, the cold climates or whatever climate was applicable to the animal would follow them around wherever they went. You can see that there with the polar bear. Just phenomenal stuff. And you've got birds carrying babies off into the sky. Absolutely horrifying. But that's what that's in every case it was midah kineged midah. It was measure for measure. Hashem did not miss out on anything in terms of his retribution, not to the finest nanometer or nanomillimeter, whatever you call it. Everything was repaid measure for measure. This is the death of the livestock. This is the pestilence. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. If you have that on your coffee table or in the lounge room, it's a talking point. You'll get visitors coming over and they won't be able to put the thing down. And they'll go, oh, I never knew it was that bad, or I never knew it looked like that. This is a book that I've had for a very long time. This is another one by Gadi Pollack, and it is the Pesach Haggadah. So you can buy this, and it has a Haggadah in it, beautifully illustrated. But not only that, it has depictions of everything that leads up to the Exodus and the Exodus itself. Here we have Paro bathing in the blood of Jewish babies. And we read that he had a skin condition and that every day he had to bathe in the blood of over 100 Hebrew babies. And if you look carefully, you can see there is an elder, a Jewish elder, humiliated by sitting in front of him with a lamp on his head giving light. And he would have to stay there deathly still, otherwise the hot oil would drip onto him and burn him. And so you can see some of the tortures that they inflicted upon the Hebrews. And if you look carefully at the brickwork, you can even see the brickwork on the walls shows the Egyptians abusing the Hebrews. And it really makes you think, wow, this just became unbearable. Here's another Hebrew there being whipped as he pushes a wagon. And that opens out into an absolutely ginormous image of an evening of the Egyptians setting the Hebrews to work. If you look carefully there, they're drowning the babies in the Nile. And if you look even more carefully there and you pause the video, you'll see that they're even burying a child inside the actual brickwork of one of the buildings they're building, which kicks off the whole Exodus. That, along with an incident with one of the daughters of the tribe of Ephraim, she lost her baby while she was treading down mud to make bricks. She was pregnant and she gave birth while she was in the mud pit, and the baby drowned. And there is a picture of her crying out in the mud pit after she gave birth and the baby drowned. And so the archangel Michael took these infants, these dead infants, before the actual throne of Hashem and said something has to be done now. Things are getting out of control. And if you avail yourself of Jewish writings, you're going to get such a deeper perspective and understanding of these things that you profess to love. This is a great little one. This is called A Dozen Holy Tribes. Now, this one is really interesting and very different to the other ones I've just showed you, because this is a tour of all the different tribes, beautifully illustrated by Gadi Pollack. And every sort of 4 pages is devoted to each tribe. Which tribe will we look at? Let's look at the tribe of Shimon. So there's the banner of Shimon there. Okay, you're not going to get a more accurate banner of that tribe. And on the next page, you have the actual gemstone that represents that tribe. And you have anything and everything, even the astrological sign, which is Aryeh, which in Gentile terms is Leo. And there's the Givura is the actual strength, is the actual essence of the tribe. And we have here information on the lineage, the progenitor of the tribe and the immediate family. And then on the next page, you have where that tribe resided in the actual encampment. And you can see it's highlighted white there. And on the next page, you have the actual locality of Shimon where the tribe resided in the land. This is just absolutely insane. If you profess to even 1% be interested in the Bible, you know, this is something that you just cannot pass up. It'd be a great gift. You have on the next page interesting facts about the tribe. Anything from which member of the spies, which spy represented that tribe, and a little picture up there in the corner. Hannah, the mother of Shmuel, the prophet, she was a prominent person, and there's a little illustration of her there. It's just got so many interesting things. Things that are a key feature of that tribe, like characteristics of that tribe, and so on. And then it goes on to the next one there with the tribe of Levi. So it doesn't leave out the tribe of Levi, which is pretty cool, which is 13 tribes technically, 12 plus 1. So yeah, these books are absolutely a must-have to anybody's, a must-add addition to anybody's library, especially if you have kids. But if you don't have kids and you're an adult and you have an insatiable desire to want to learn more about what actually happened, you know, I want to find out as much as I can about all these events. These books are a good place to start, and that's just scratching the surface. He has literally hundreds of books out there. They're available in the public domain through Judaica stores. You can get these across Amazon, and he's got books that focus on Jewish sages, things that focus more upon the Orthodox Jewish world and things like that, which are really interesting as well, and will give you multiple insights on every single page. So do yourself a favor and go out and start to add these to your library. Look out for this guy over the web and get anything and everything you can that has been put out by this man. Just before I finish, there is a seal of approval on each of these books by the relevant rabbinical councils. And so these seals of approval are what you're looking for. This means that what you're about to buy is 100% kosher. If it doesn't have this seal, I can't vouch for it, nor can anybody else. Listen, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this episode. There's a lot there. I hope I did it justice. It's only a short video. And let me know if you've already got some Gadi Pollack books. Put a comment down if there's some that you recommend that I didn't mention, and there's lots, because like I said, I barely scratched the surface. You can even put links down below in the comments to where you can pick up all of his books. And if you know of any links, please put them also in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. Until next time, bye for now.